Hi, this is Sally, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a basic gathered valance. Now, it's not that basic, there's a little bit of shaping, but we can discuss that. So let's get on with it. Now, because it's gathered, I'm going to need two lengths, and I'm going to go from pattern repeat to pattern repeat here. So I'm going to pull this across and fold the fabric along those two, so that one there to this one here. So that's that pattern, and that's that. So smooth that out, and I'm going to cut this one, and then I'm going to do the same. So I've got two matching pieces. Now one of these I'm going to have to cut in half, so I'm going to make sure that where the pattern is printed, there to there, is in line, because the selvages can be wider one side than the other, which is the case with this particular piece. And cut that down here, just fold it and cut on that fold line. I need to pattern match. If I fold this over here, you will see that there is the pattern match. Seeing as I'm going to be sewing it on this side, because I like to go from the bottom to the top, I'm going to fold that over. It's usually about 1/4 of an inch on average that they've overprinted. So I'm going to iron this one and one side of the second one into place. There's my 1/4 inch. It's a generous one because there's quite a bit of turning, and I'm just going to go all the way down like this on this one, and in the same place, or more or less in the same place, on the second one. And this is the best way of doing it. All you've got to do is line your pattern up. So if I do that and pop that on top, that's where it is. Fold the fabric back out. Now, something I have noticed is the thicker the fabric, the more unfolded you need to be, but this is quite thin, so I should be okay. Pop that out. I'm going to start, I've got the fold of the fabric that I ironed going straight down where the needle is, because that's where it needs to go. Forward and back. Actually, I don't know why I'm doing that there, because I'm going to be cutting it off, but anyway, line up the next section, which looks to be there, unfold it, just make sure that it still looks lined up. This is really slippery fabric. And now I'm going to sew up towards there. Straighten everything out, realign everything a little bit further up, and sew towards there until you get to the top. I've put my lining underneath. Now the right side of the lining is the side that is woven. I'm using thermal lining. I usually use blackout lining. So the woven side is the right side, and the side that's been treated is the wrong side. I caught one of my girls once sewing on the wrong side, which was quite amusing, but she wasn't very happy when it was pointed out to her. Anyway, I've got the middles lined up here, and I'm going to pin going back towards the outside edge. I need all of this to be level, and this just keeps it in place as I'm doing things. And I think I might put a couple along the top because I don't really want it moving too far. I've tried to get the seams in line. They're not very well in line. The fabric is twisted, so getting the straighter edge along the bottom is more important. This is to be shaped, and usually do things in thirds. So say 50 inches divided by 3 is round about 18. I'm just going on averages. I'm going to put 18 inches here as my first third on each side. Actually, I am going to mark that here. I will be losing a little bit because obviously I've got a side seam. Now I am going to put my pin here just through the top layer like that, although I'm going to be treating everything as one unit. So there's that. Comes down, finish pinning this in here like that. So that's my first third. Put that over. I'm going to pull it across so I can get to the next. I'm going to measure from this little nick here across 18 inches, which brings me to here. And now I'm going to move that along again. Now the front is actually longer than the 18. Actually, no, it isn't. It's shorter. That's unusual. It's usually longer. So this is going to be my first third going backwards. And how much am I going to take off? I would say maybe 5 inches. So I'm going to cut back along here 5 inches till I get to my 18 mark. And as I do that, I'm going to take my pins out, and I'm going to pin the top layer of the lining to the bottom layer of my fabric, because I'm going to be sewing that. Go a little bit further, and I'm going to actually make that the 18. So just another little nick and transfer this into this one to hold it all in place. Alright, so that's that side. Now I'm going to take my line from here down. I'm just going to draw it in for now. Now that's just to give me a guide. I don't necessarily have to be on that line. So I'm going to give this a little gentle curve rather than an angle. Bring it down and I'm going to cut parallel to there about ½ inch out till I get to the bottom. Bring it in slightly so it's almost on that line, and then as I get here I'm going to just curve that out like that. And again I'm just going to pin the top layer of the lining to the bottom layer here like this. Cut this piece in half like this. The problem here is because this is rippled, it's going to show the underside. I don't want the underside to be showing as white, as plain white, which means I am going to, that's for that side, this is for this side, I'm going to top stitch this in place along here, which means I'm going to fold this down here by about ½ inch and iron it into place. What I've done is I've made it level with the outside edge of here where I want this to lay flat. I will recut this shaping here only because it makes it easier to see what's going on like that. And I'm going to roll my fabric back up and pin this into place, and only on the top layer like this, into this area here. There we go. Pin this also to the top layer just to hold it for now. So everything is one piece. And now I'm going to pull this piece out and flip this all over so I can get to the other side of my valance. Again, line it up as you did on the other side and then pin into place. So I pulled back the top and I am going to top stitch this onto the lining across each section. Now some people would put it higher, that's entirely up to you, but I try to save fabric. I underdo things sometimes. So when you've sewn it all into place, just realign it and it should go in where you need it to and pin it. That all goes in to here. That's that side done. I'm just going to do the other side exactly the same way. So I've just lined everything up again and I'm going to run the base of this against the side of my foot. Let's do this. I'm keeping everything taut to itself, all 3 layers. As I get to the curve, I'm still keeping everything where it needs to be. And I'm going to follow the edge all the way to the other end of this length of fabric. This is cotton interlining, which I also put in my valances. I'm going to pin that. I know I've already sewn everything else in. With this, I'm going to be coming down the side of here. So I'll cut this back like this so that everything is in line when I sew it in. I'm going to make my way around all of this, make sure it's nice and even. And as I come around here, I'm going to trim back to the shape of the valance underneath, like this. Just take little sections. You could do it the other way up. It's just that this tends to get caught on things and doesn't stay very flat. Oh, I knew I was going to be close, but I'm going to cut up here very carefully because I'm cutting the lining off as well. I can see through where the pattern is. I'm going to do it very carefully. I'm also going to check that that's where I'm going. I can cut it back later if need be. I've overlapped this. I'm not going to make a seam. I'm just going to lay it flat like this and just sew one against the other from the top to the bottom, and then that is my drawing made. I've pinned this into place so it won't move. Now sew it. Okay, so I've got the bump down. I was going to do it the other way up, but I've got a feeling it might walk. It does sometimes. So if I put it down, then I shouldn't have any of those problems. And I'm just going to sew all the way around, removing the pins as I go. Keep all of the fabrics pulled against each other so they don't walk. Make sure the corner's straight when you come into it. But I'm going to stop just before that row of stitching and pull this on round. I want the row of stitching to be running just on the inside of my foot here so that everything is hidden when it's hanging up, and try to keep it as even as possible. It should be nearly ½ inch seam allowance. I've just cut one of the corners back there, and now only when I go around the curves, just like in dressmaking, cut some nicks in. Don't go over your sewing line because that makes such a horrible mess of things, and then you have to put another row in. turn it the right way round. Push those corners out really hard if you can. There's quite a bit of fabric in there, so they might not want to, and depending on the fabric on the front as well. Put the lining up on top. I want this to be quite a crisp line, so everything is pointing up, and I'm just going to press it up like that. Press it away from the seam. And what should happen is when I pull it back down and into shape like that, I should be able to have a nice smooth edge there, and it should be a little bit going up on the inside, and then I need to also make sure the sides are in line too. Now some people will fold this over so there's a seam like that over, but I don't tend to do that. Sometimes I do. Because I've got this going in, I don't need to, so I'm just going to iron that out like that and up. And as I go around the corner, it's following suit, so I don't have to worry too much. A little bit of steam goes a long way, and I'm going to iron everything up to the top here, like that. The lady wanted it 24 inches, but I'm not going to waste all that fabric to do it. It would have been another length because the turning is right on the edge here, so I'm going to make it 23.5 inches. It's close enough that nobody's going to be measuring it to find out. So there's my 23.5. Pop that along here. I've got one here at 23.5 and one here at 23.5. I'm going to turn that over. It is really, really tight and can be quite problematic. I will iron this one into place like that, and I'm going to pull the next one into place here like that. Now the advantage I've got with this fabric is the pattern is repeated all the way across the top. So I'm going to pop that in and pin it into place. There's my pin there. Remove this one and pop it here. Now I'm going to work out where my pattern is that repeats here, and that is the pattern that I'm going to repeat all the way across the top of this valance. I used this the other day for another project, and I'm going to use it again today. I'm going to set this about 1/8 of an inch up from my crease line, about 1/4 of a centimetre, and I'm going to sew it both sides. Down this side, I'm going to pull these threads back like this so they don't get sewn in, but I'm not putting it too close to the front because I don't want it to show either. Work my way all the way across the top, and then I'm going to just sew the top in too. I'm going to cut this piece off at the top. I have my valance board here. It goes 4 to 5 inches either side of the window. I have marked my board here, and I am going to pop that over there and staple it in. I have my centre marked. My next quarter mark is here. Lay the pin over the mark itself and attach. And then I'm going to pop this one in here and also attach. Then using my strings here, I'm going to pull them up. It's easier if you use something like this because the gathers will go in more evenly like this. Now I take about 1 centimetre behind like that. It just means that it's against the wall and it shouldn't show. And then I'm going to bring these pleats in slightly. There we go. Pull that in towards the centre so that the original line that was ironed in is on the edge of the board, and staple. Try to even everything out. So if you feel that those are a little bit too gathered, ease those out and along the front. But as I say, just make sure that those folds are right where that iron mark was. To be honest, you don't need too many pleats on the side. It's just to give an illusion that it's all pleated up. Try to square off your corner and make your way around. Once you have worked all of that into place, then you put the piping on. The piping must come to the edge of the wood. It's to hide absolutely everything that's going on up there. So that goes to the back like that, and then staple it in. I think this is going against the ceiling. I have a feeling that's where it's going to. I still need to make sure that all of the top is covered as best as possible. Put it into position. Put card along the back here for back tacking, and I'm just going to pull this over. The reason why you use the same fabric as you do for the rest is if you had a window treatment that was by some stairs, you'd always see the top of the window treatment, and that is why we use this. Now if I was in the UK, I would use some interlining along the top there too, just to soften it. But say this one's going up to the ceiling, so it really doesn't matter. If you were to look at it from the top of the stairs, you'd put these in the back so that it is really nice and smooth, and it would be hidden. As I say, this one doesn't matter so much, so I'm just doing it this way. Which reminds me, the end here would be really nicely tucked in as well. This one, it matters not really very much. Pop that in like that, and just put a couple of staples here. Make sure all of this is nice and tidy. You don't want any loose ends, so cut all of those off and roll that in. Thank you for joining me today on this project. It's a little bit stiff, but I think once it's in place, I can pull some of these back into line so it won't look so stiff. But part of it's the nature of the fabric. This is chintz or glazed cotton. Chintz is not a flowy fabric, it's always a little bit stiff. And that's why I didn't put the black outlining behind it, because the black outlining would have just been as bad. So I think with the thermal lining and the interlining that I put in there, it will hang nicely. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be absolutely brilliant. And in the meantime, see you later, take care. Ciao.